But right now, I want to get your take on game one because what an incredible game that was. And, we got to start off at that level one. And CLG might not be playing with tricks anymore, but it was an alternate that brought the tricks on that level one. How much do you guys think that influenced just the way the game went in that early game?
Right off the get-go, you saw Alternate doing all they can to get the lead, and you saw it with the TP bottom lane with Mundo and Leona. The thing is, they had to blow Flash on Leona for that gank, which made it really obvious that Dexter was going to come down for the gank and even out the game. But as you saw, Dexter eventually progressed to go top lane to try to gank for Nian, because Elise and Olaf are two champions that can deal with heavy, beefy front lines since they have percentage damage and true damage. But Kevin played excellently throughout the laning phase. He played it safe. He knew he was going to be a target. He was going to get picked on because you pick Olaf to kill the tanks. And he didn't die a single time. He read all of Dexter's ganks and was able to stay safe while RNA ganked middle and bottom and snowballed the game for his team.
Yeah, I actually want to give a lot of props to RNA in this match because we talked about early game how Shyvana's not the best early game ganker. You don't get to do a whole lot before level 6. And so instead, every time that Ara saw Dexter go gank someone, he went and counter jungled. He would steal away a whole bunch of the buffs. And again, you saw on the red buff steal, he hit level 6. Once he hit 6, he started comboing with J-Ree. He started coming in there and diving in off the Leona ultimates. He got a couple of kills bottom lane. He got then a kill mid lane as well off of Kerp's Gragas and snowballed that way and sort of played the game really well and built this huge early mid game lead just using his ultimate.
Yeah.
How much do we think that the influence of that junglers and that early game influenced the bottom lane? Because it seemed to me like there was a huge difference there in the Creaton J-Ree matchup versus Double Lift Afromu.
Exactly. It was J-Ree's engages. It was the Leona coming in there. And I know Jat talked about it, the Flays usually knocking back the Zenith Blade engagements. But then anytime he would miss it, Leona got on top of him, popped the ulti, and you just blow up when that happens. You're a fairly squishy lane, Jinx, Thresh. There's not always a lot of stats there. And when a Shyvana comes in as a dragon, it's going to tend to pick up kills that way.
Do you think, Crumbs, that you were mentioning the way that Kevin can read Dexter, is that something that you can mediate from one game to game two, or will he just keep on doing that in the series?
I think he is able to, he may be able to keep doing that in the next games, but seeing the team comps and how the laning phase should have been played, the team comp that CLG had, when you let somebody get Mundo, you obviously want to have a plan against it. So by picking Olaf and Elise, I think he's able to know that he's going to be a priority target throughout the laning phase. So that's why he played it. Maybe he just doesn't really know Dexter that well, but just knowing that he's going to be a priority target for ganks, he's able to hang back. But the times that he read the ganks were beautiful. You saw the ward in the mid lane, brush in top lane, and then when Dexter was trying to come in for a gank through the lane, he backed out right away, and then he was just left empty-handed while RNA kept counter-jungling him and ganking bottom lane.
Yeah, absolutely. And how much... It's like typical CLG fashion, right? They were very much, they were behind in the early game, and then they came back, and it seemed like their comp really came together. Do you feel like Alternate made some heavy mistakes in that mid to late game?
There were a couple that were a little bit suspect. I think anytime they ended up actually getting caught out, thing is CLG doesn't have any real engage tools. They have to try to land a Cocoon or land a Thresh Hook, or like hope that they can use the Ascension active and catch up to people. So anytime someone got picked on by Alternate, that's them being out of position. We saw that a couple times with Kerp getting caught out. We saw that any time that CLG actually got some ground was, I think, kind of a mistake getting caught out there by Alternate, and that eventually snowballed into CLG actually getting a Baron off of that, off of a really, really silly sort of overextended engage. CLG picks up some kills, picks up Baron, and then Alternate does more silly things, and they teleport in to try to take the Baron back after it goes down in a 3v5, and they die some more. And
yeah, thrown out.
There were a little bit of silly moves there by Alternate. I think the rest of the sieges went pretty much optimally. They slowly poked the turrets down, used their gigantic health regen pools to just whittle down on structures and finally get some way in.
Yeah, and then at the end, they, of course, got the positional advantage over CLG. Well, they could just rush into the base. And in the early game and in the mid game, we saw a lot how strong Lucian was, but Crumbs, actually you that noted that Kerp was doing extremely well in that matchup.
Yeah, looking at the end game screen, Kerp actually did 3 times the damage dealt to champions that Lucian did. And his barrels were what made it possible for Alternate to actually push down turrets because they only have 1 range and 4 melee champions, which are not going to be the best in terms of pushing towers. So what they need to push turrets is going to be poke down CLG or spread them out so they can get some chipping into the tower. and his ultimates and barrels were hitting Dexter and Nian all around. And you saw in some of his pushes, just ulti the wave. Don't even go for an engage, just ulti them away, do damage. That's going to be able to put CLG's health bars low enough that they can just face tank the turrets, get the turret, get the inhibitor, and then eventually get objectives. But he was just so farmed and so fed that you saw late game, he two-shot both Elise and Italy and was able to win the game. But even if that didn't happen, all he needed to do was throw an ultimate out, and they would have been able to push down the turret.
So we saw good play from both teams, but also a lot of mistakes, if I can say that fairly, and in a first game that they've played in a long time. That is to be expected, of course. What do we think will happen here in the next game? Will Europe close it out, or CLG coming back?
I gotta say, I'm surprised Alternate came a lot stronger than I expected. I really thought the addition of Dexter would bring a whole lot to CLG and they'd have just a ton of pressure. But as Crumbs pointed out, Kevin was reading all of Dexter's ganks, and that gank style from Dexter hasn't done very much. I think Alternate's play calling, I think, largely has been better. I think they've done some really smart things, especially that ending base trade where they said, we have positioning, we can dive up mid, just use Gragas for disengage, we can just hit buildings and win the game. Plays like that are really, really smart. And things like that, I think, makes me feel a lot better about Alternate here.
Crumbs?
I also think that you got to look at the dynamic of how this series is going to go. It's going to be different from any other game because 3 games is going to be played for Alternate on blue, CLG on purple. So picks and bans are going to have a completely new dimension because oftentimes you see people try to change their picks and bans and see, okay, now we want to get these champions since we're first pick. But now that they're purple the entire time, we are may be able to just see the exact same combos. Maybe CLG feels confident. You know what? We just misplayed it. We're not going to fall for the same things again. We're going to play the same thing out. You can play your game again. And we just think we're going to play better this next game. And we could even see the same combos 3 games in a row.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how everything plays out. But now we're going to check out our favorite answer to the first Twitter question of the day. Of course, earlier we asked, which Battle of the Atlantic lane matchup are you most excited to see and why? And here's what you had to say. The first answer is from @lolcanoe. He says, I'm eager to watch Dexter face off against Aranea. They both are very strong junglers with the capacity to make game-changing decisions, and we saw that perfectly in Game 1.
Absolutely. We know both of these junglers are good enough that they can get ganks basically anywhere they go. We saw Dexter ganking bottom lane multiple times. We saw Aranea gank mid, gank bottom, and is able to turn kills. Dexter made some plays and able to get the first dragon for CLG, actually. And outside of the laning phase is really where the game was determined. And that's just where champion picks comes along. But even Dexter, even though he fell behind, he was able to pull off plays with cocoons. We saw in the top tower, one of the things that snowballed CLG's Baron was a cocoon on Gragas. And he's still able to maintain himself relevant into the game. And these 2 players are basically the ones that are able to determine the early game for each of their teams. And that's what we're going to see in the next couple of games as well.
All right, now the second tweet is from @Malblood. He says, I am most excited to see Hai versus Xpeke. If Hai can hold his own, I think Cloud9 will win.
I think that's actually the key to the Cloud9 strategy right now is basically Hai's champion pool. Thinking back to the last time these 2 teams met was at Worlds, and basically Hai got banned out. He had a really short champion pool, and it really hurt his team. I think if Hai's used the offseason to gain a couple more champions, and he doesn't get banned out and gets to bring a lot to help his team, I think that helps Cloud9 a ton.
Of course, see that matchup play out on Sunday. And then the last tweet is from @Oriana is mine. ManCloud versus Alex Ish. We haven't seen this matchup before, and both mids are phenomenal.
I actually really agree. I like watching ManCloud. He really stepped it up throughout 2013. He became one of the premier mid laners in North America. Alex Ich, of course, has been a premier mid laner for like ever. So, of course, these are 2 of the best players in their role. And honestly, XDG's been dark for a while, whereas we just saw Gambit crush a bunch of faces recently. So I want to see how these teams stack up.
Yeah, we'll see that matchup tomorrow, of course. Now, those were some great answers, but we want more. So keep hitting us up on Twitter. We're @LOL Esports. And remember to use the hashtag LCS. And now let's send it back over.